Right, opposite colour bishops, one or two files separating. Black to play, nothing to pause the video for here. This is a game from 1996 between Karpov and Kamsky. It's a very drawn position. Karpov's got an incredibly good defensive setup going on here. They could have just agreed a draw here, but the game actually went knight g4, bishop takes g4 check, king takes g4. This is actually in the workbook of the 100 Endgames You Must Know in the Book of Jesus, and the question is something along the lines of like, can black win with knight g4? And the answer is no, but there's not really anything else that black could do. So I chose this position because it demonstrates very nicely that when the two pawns are separated by one file, the draw's very, very easy. Okay, Karpov just played king d2 and they agreed a draw there. All white has to do is keep their bishop on this diagonal so that the king and the bishop are controlling the e3 square. And there's no way for black to make progress. The king can't be shifted from d2. If the c pawn pushes forward, the king just takes it, and then the bishop can just be sacrificed for the other pawn whenever it crosses the e3 square. So the only thing you'd have to be careful of is if the black king comes into f3, make sure your bishop's not on e3, because then this c3 check idea, I don't even know if that would be winning, but it doesn't look. In fact, that would be winning, wouldn't it? Because there's no way to defend the bishop. So yeah, just watch out for that basically. But just keep your bishop on this diagonal. I don't think there's any problem with it just being over here, to be honest. And then black has no way to make progress. The e3 push can't happen because you just take the pawn with your bishop. The c3 pawn push can't happen. You take it with your king. So the only way that black can make progress is to get their king round to b3 to control c3. But then you just do the same thing on the other diagonal. You know, it's going to take, what, 6 or 7 moves for black to get their king to b3. And we just put our bishop on this diagonal here. Excuse me, with the same thing. Just being careful not to have our bishop on c3 when the black king is on b3, because then the e3 pawn push would probably win the game for black. And again, why not just have your bishop up there if the black king was on b3? So complete draw. When there's one file separating, it's pretty easy. So 1 to 2 files separating. If it's two bishops pawns, it's usually a win. Okay, especially if you've got to the point where the defending side's bishop can't control them on one diagonal, because I guess that's the pants, isn't it? Bishops don't cope very well with pants. So this is a very easy win. We could even play king e6 here if we wanted to, but you know, just take a bit of care. Your c pawn's not defended at the moment. You get away with king e6 anyway because you're hitting the bishop, but far simpler. Or just to take the stress out of it. Come back, defend your c pawn, and I mean, black's played some moves here, but you know, black defends the f8 square, but then your king can come round. There's a check. Black's got to come back and defend the f8 square, and then you can just move your king in, and it's done. Okay, this black king can't defend this one and come and control the f8 square at the same time. It's a pretty easy win. So when is it not a win? Well, it's the principle of one diagonal. So this is an Averbaka position from a famous study from 1950. It appears like in all the endgame books. And black draws this by having their bishop on the one diagonal and doing this thing that Dvoretsky calls maintaining the zone. So at the moment the black bishop and king are controlling the f4 square, and you just keep the white king out. You can just move your king up and down this diagonal, keeping the white king out, just called maintaining the zone. A term from ice hockey, apparently, or hockey, as it says in the book. I call it ice hockey. I used to play hockey. Yeah. Anyway, king d5, king f6, and the white king can make their way around to b7, and the bishop just shifts off to f4, and there it is, maintaining the zone. We just don't let the white king in. Yeah, so that's the principle of one diagonal again. So have a go at this one. Black to play, pause the video, see if you can work out what black needs to do here to maintain the zone. We've got this bishop, principle of one diagonal, stopping the f4 and c7 pushes. But this one's not easy. There's actually only one drawing move here. And the first thing to say is that if the white king lands on d7, the black king needs to land on b6, because we've got to have control of c7 with the king and the bishop. Okay. And that means that if the white king was on e6, we would need to be on c5, and if the white king was on f5, we would need to be on d4. So that's got to be like the matching king journey, is that when white plays this king journey, we've got to do this king journey. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. But as soon as we play king d4, if they want to, white can play pawn to f4, because we've relinquished control of the f4 square. So then you've got to think, well, hang on, where do you want your bishop in that case? Because two losing moves straight away from that analysis are bishop g3 and bishop h2. So for example, bishop h2, black's lost. King f5 has to be met with king d4, because you've got to meet king d7 with king b6. But now f4, and you can't stop c7. So yeah, bad luck. Bishop g3 and bishop h2 both lose, so bad luck if you chose one of those. If you play your bishop to one of d6, e5 or f4, you're going to have the problem that it's hanging at some point when we're trying to match white's f5, e6, d7 king journey with our d4, c5, b6 king journey. We have to match that king journey with the black king journey doing that. We've got to arrive on b6 at the same time as the white king arrives on d7. And it doesn't matter where you put your bishop on f4, e5 or d6, there'll be a problem and you won't be able to match that king journey. I mean, let's look at, we know what the solution is now. We've got to move our bishop because we've got to keep control of f4. If you put it on g3 or h2, you lose, because f4 in a minute will block the c7 square. It will block our defense of c7. And we're about to see that if you plonk it on f4, e5 or d6, that's going to create a hanging bishop problem, where we're going to lose a tempo sorting that out, a crucial tempo that we haven't got because we've got to match the king journey. So can we guess what the only drawing move is, given that we have to move our bishop and keep it on that diagonal, but not to any of those squares? So I say, yeah, bishop c7 is, of course, the only drawing move. But let's look at bishop f4, bishop e5, and bishop d6 to see what the problem is with them. So bishop f4 check, king f5. Remember, king f5 has to be met with king d4. Well, your bishop's gone. So that's it, can't do that. Bishop e5, we can meet king f5 with king d4, but king e6 has to be met with king c5. It's gone. And finally, bishop d6, king f5, that's alright, we can meet king f5 with king d4, king e6, yeah, meet that with king c5, and then king d7, oh, we have to meet that with king b6. It's gone. So it's actually quite rare for two bishops' pawns for the in opposite colour bishops, for the defending side to be able to hold it by maintaining the zone. You have to get the pawns on the principle of one diagonal, and even then you need some thought into where do you want your bishop on that diagonal, given there's going to be some matching king journeys that are needed in order to maintain the zone. 1957, that study was put together to demonstrate that. And yeah, bishop c7 is now just a draw. King f5 can be met by king d4. Let's say the white king comes back. Oh, we could have taken the c pawn there actually. The only last thing I was going to mention is, hang on, what happens if back in this position, if in fact, let's go to the original position. So bishop c7, drawing move, king f5, king d4. You might be wondering, well, hang on a minute, haven't you just relinquished control of f4? And now white's got the pants. And it's like, well, you come back to e3, and the f4 pawn's falling straight away. Because, yeah, the white king's blocking it. That actually makes me wonder a little bit about king f6, but I suppose king f6 isn't a problem, is it? Because then the white king isn't threatening to defend f4. Now, if we go back to the Avabacher position the famous position from 1950, if we swap the king and the bishop round, so the bishop was on c7 controlling this diagonal, whilst the king maintains the zone. If we swap them round, we can see it's just hopeless for black, just completely hopeless. You needed control of f4. I mean, what does black do? I just look at the best engine move: bishop f6, king f5, bishop c3, king into e6. Yeah, I mean, you can see that black's completely dead there. So two bishop's pawns usually win unless the defending side can maintain the zone. Now, what if it's a central and a knight's pawn with two files separating, and the one that sort of features in all the endgame books, this is a position from 1948, actually from a game, is where the defending side controls the promotion of the knight's pawn. Now, what I'm going to do is play this against Stockfish on level 8, and hopefully show how the defensive procedure works. Let's give it a go. So continue from here. Play with the computer. Stockfish level 8. Where is it? There it is. I shall be white. The first move is pretty obvious because we have to stop the black king coming into d2. If the black king comes into d2, then there's no, the bishop would then have to keep control of e2, and at some stage we could just overwork that bishop with a b pawn. So king e2 has to be played, and let's see what Stockfish does. I was hoping it was going to do some messing around first, but it's pushed the b pawn straight away. Now, something that's important here is that our bishop controls the b1 square. We have to stop the black king getting to c1. If the black king gets to c1, then we've had it. Okay, so we have to stop that. But we have to do it now, because if black plays king b2, they're actually threatening something else, which we'll see. So I'm gonna put my king on d1, where I'm stopping the black king getting to c1, and I'm also keeping an eye on the e2 square. So Stockfish is now playing a waiting move, and now I'm just going to maintain control of the b1 square. Whilst black does nothing, I'm just going to maintain control of b1. Oh god, is it not going to do? It's not going to do 50 moves. I thought it was going to do 50 moves, and then finally do okay, and then finally try to make progress. So now black's got a threat, and that threat is king a1. Okay, so black's threatening king a1 in this position, where you've then had it. So that's why we had to play king d1 when the king was back on c3, because otherwise black would come into b2, and that forks the a1 and c1 square. Okay. Now it's not a fork because we're covering c1, but as soon as the black king comes to either the a2 or the b2 square, they're threatening king a1. We have to play this. You have to hit the b pawn to stop them making progress. I think now you also have to play bishop back to f5. I might be wrong about that actually. Yeah, you might not have to play bishop back to f5 here. I think if the black king's on a3, you absolutely do. Is there a problem? There might be a problem with this. I don't know, actually, but I know that bishop f5 is fine because black's not threatening anything. Be interesting to come back to that, actually, and see. Okay, so now we hit the b pawn again. Let's see what black does here. Right, now we do have to play bishop f5 because black's threatening b2, I think, in this position. Which, if you try and... You can't defend it with the king because the king's stopping this pawn. And when you bring your bishop to f5, then king a2 comes in, so you have to play bishop f5 here. Messing around, waiting move. Let's... Okay, king back to b2. Then we have to hit the b pawn again. King to c3. This is the one where I don't know if you have to play bishop f5 or bishop g6 in this case, but we can, so that's fine. Bishop g6. Ooh, what's that? King d4. Well, I think I can come back to e2. Again, I don't know if that was necessary, but it's sort of going back to the same position we already had, which I know is fine. That's a nothing move. I'll do a nothing move. Just keep control of b1. All the time black's doing nothing moves. Might be start to get a bit boring if Stockfish does like 50 moves worth of stuff. So it'd be nice if it tries to do something else to make progress. It hasn't put the king on a2 yet, which would be a... There you go. It's threatening king a1, so you've got to hit the b pawn. Whenever king a1 is threatened, you've got to hit the b pawn. Just keep hitting it. And then that's back to the position I don't know, but I know that bishop g6 is fine. Let's match that, same as we did before. Let's hope it does something interesting in a minute. You see it's just repeating, but with the bishop on a different square, so it's not threefold repetition. That's what the engines do, don't they? Got to hit the pawn when king a1 is threatened. King a3, now b2 is being threatened, so we've got to play bishop f5. Aha! Something different. Okay, so when the black king's threatening to come to a2, we have to have our bishop on b1. And now I'm just going to put the king on e2. So now the king isn't threatening to come to a2, so I can just move the bishop around on this diagonal again. Probably going to pre-move that one, actually. There's no way for the black king on the other side. If black tries to make progress with the king on either b3 or a3, they're too far away from their e pawn, and then I just move the king. So I guess that's the final thing that I'd like to see Stockfish do, just to demonstrate the defensive procedure, which I think I have. Might have to stop this in a sec if it goes on too long. I'm hoping, I want it to bring its king to a3 or b3, just to show the last bit of the defensive procedure. Go on, king b3 now. Oh no, alright. Or king c3, didn't want to pre-move that. King c3, got to make it a bit more interesting. No, carry on. They're strange, aren't they, engines? They don't think in a human way, so. I mean, we can all see that if black just carries on moving their bishop around, they're getting nowhere. So as a human being, you're not going to make any... You wouldn't think to do that. You would try and make some progress by bringing a king round to b3. You want to try and put white in zugzwang, but it's not zugzwang because we're just going to move our king. He's not going to try anything. Now I'll move. That's my 80th move. Oh, there you go. 50 moves without progress. That was a draw. So a bit of a shame, really, that Stockfish didn't bring their king to either a3 or b3. But the point is that then you can just move your king. Okay, because there's just no way to make progress. Right. Let's go back to the positions. So this one's a game that happened in 1999 between two pretty highly rated players, and the game continued. King c4, bishop to e7, king b5, king g7, bishop d3, h6, and they agreed a draw. But in one of the chess publications at the time, the guy that was playing white had sort of he'd been analysing at this stage, trying to work out if he could win it, and chose king c4 and sort of then just agreed that draw. He gave king c4 like double question marks in his own analysis, because he couldn't find the win over the board, which he then later found analysing it with a friend or an acquaintance who was also a top player, and saying that, you know, white wins this. White should have won this with king c6. And then he goes through the variations. So we're coming in, we're hitting the b pawn. Black attacks the b pawn. So he saw all of this. We'll get to the bit which he claims that the move he didn't see, which he claims is a win. It's that claim that's the wrong bit. So yeah, bishop e7 hits the b pawn. White pushes the b pawn, and the bishop comes and defends on b6. So he looked at all this and thought, well, this is just not making any progress. Push the e pawn. You know, he saw all of this, and he saw he could do this, etc., etc. Yeah, that was the move he said he didn't see. Okay, because the g pawn's being attacked, so he'd analysed everything up till here, and decided not to play king c6 because he didn't think he got him anywhere. But then later on said, well, actually king c6 is a win. If for example bishop d8, then you can take on h7. That's also not a win either. But after bishop takes g5, in the analysis he saw this king takes b6, and now it's a win for white. So we'd see king e7, king back to c6, bishop f4. This was all in the analysis. b6, and then yeah, after h5, saving the h pawn, of course, or just pushing the h pawn, I don't know. White can win, which is true. White wins with king b7. But it was similar to that defensive thing I was just doing a minute ago, is that at this point, h5 was the losing move in the analysis, because at this point here, white's threatening king b7, which forks the a8 and c8 squares. That was the problem. So black should play king d8. If black plays king d8 here, that's just a draw. And it's this. Who cares about the h pawn? The h pawn's irrelevant. That's exactly the same as the position I've just shown how to defend with those 80 moves against Stockfish. h5 loses the game. King b7, and we've forked the a8 and c8 squares. And you just can't let white do that. Black might come back and hit the b6 pawn, just to stop you playing to a8 or c8 straight away, but then they just relinquish control of c7, and yeah, I mean, what does black do there? So that's just a loss. So yeah, I mean, Dvoretsky has that in his tragi-comedy section, not because the game itself went badly. I mean, this position is drawn, and the players agree to draw. It was the analysis afterwards by the player on the white side who sort of gave himself double question mark for that, and said, if I just played King C6, I win, and I win like this. I said, all the way through, that was the move I missed during the game. In my analysis, if I'd seen that, then I can see that it's a win. But it is not true, because at this point here, black should play King D8, and it's still a draw by that position that I just defended against Stockfish. Right, next, white to play. Pause the video. What would you do here? So this one should have been pretty simple, to be honest. Hopefully you're looking at that and going, well, that's just the position you just defended against Stockfish. So we'll just put our king on e2. Black can't make any progress over here, because you just leave your king on e2 and do nothing. And you leave your bishop defending the b3 square. And if the black king comes over to the queen side, then we just do what we've already seen, that defensive procedure, because the bishop's controlling the promotion square of the knight's pawn. But in the game, white played bishop f7 and lost. It went like this, king f3, we've let the black king into f2, and that's it, it's curtains. There was some messing around here. Black didn't need to do that, they could have just pushed b3 ages ago. But finally, yeah, pushing b3, and I mean, yeah, it's just completely gone. What does white do? Let's say they play bishop f3. We've got b2. King has to come to c2. The bishop defends that, and yeah, there's no way that the white king is now pretty much tied to this square, and this e pawn's coming through. You know, the king comes back to f2. This e pawn's coming through. So when in that defensive procedure, you do need to stop the black king coming in on the king side as well. Right, next, white to play. Pause the video. How are you going to defend this one? If this pawn wasn't here, wasn't there, it's the same again. Just stick your king on e2, have your bishop controlling the b3 square. So just something like bishop f7 would just be fine, wouldn't it? And in fact your king on d1, to be honest, because the black king's already on the queen side. Remember, we're trying to guard the c1 and the e2 square. The problem is that with the bishop here, this e pawn's blocking things, and it's just going to give black the one vital tempo they need to win. So bishop f7 would be a losing move. King comes into d4, king e2, king c3, and white sort of just desperately tries to get the bishop, clear that pawn basically, b3. But now we've got the problem that we kind of have to play king d1 here, because the black king is going to come to b2 and fork the a1 and c1 squares. But we've also got a pawn to get rid of, and it's gone. We can't allow the black king to a1 or c1, and if bishop d5, then king c2, same as that other position. So we can't play bishop f7, but we do need to control the b3 square. So what we're going to do is come around and hit this pawn from this side, that extra pawn. So we're going to play bishop a4, king c4, and bishop back to c2. And that was the having the bishop on this side is that crucial difference, because there's no way that black can actually look after this pawn and carry on with the plan to get b3 in. yeah, so that's it. I mean, that just draws. I mean, what else could black try? They could try king c3, and we just take the e pawn, and we're back in the drawn position. It's not a million miles away from the sort of the correct defensive setup on the two connected pass pawns, is it? Where we want to attack the pawn from the front in that correct defensive setup. Right. So that was central and knight's pawns where the defending side's bishop controlled the promotion square of the knight's pawn. If they don't, if it's the attacking side that controls the promotion of the knight's pawn, then it's virtually impossible for the defending side to defend it. So this is usually just going to be a win for the attacker. You know, what might we see in this position? Well, white could play, I don't know, bishop to c5. They want to play e6, but they can't at the moment because the d6 bishop's hanging. So bishop c5. I mean, I'll just look at black's top engine moves. Really, I should play this against Stockfish, shouldn't I? Should I do that? Should I go back and play this against Stockfish and demonstrate it's an easy win? This will probably go wrong now. Okay, I'm going to go bishop c5 and see what black does. They're in a sort of zugzwang here. Can I play e6? I'm just getting a little bit worried about the principle of one diagonal, and can I get held up on that diagonal? I don't think so. So now I'm controlling all of the squares in front there, so I'm going to bring my king round over here. Whilst the king's blocking this pawn, it's surely a good idea to bring the king over to help the pawn that the bishop's holding up. So king d6. I need to defend my e pawn at some point, but not yet. If I go king c7, he's going to go bishop c4, isn't he? Let's go king c6. Little check. He's going to play bishop d5 and force the e pawn forward. I guess I'm just a tiny bit concerned about the one diagonal thing happening. Let's just go with it and hope I don't get done in a diagonal thing. I was half expecting bishop d5 there, forcing the e pawn forward, and oh, he's going to bring round to c4 again, isn't he? Okay, let's just see what happens if I do this. I'm just going to go for the really simple. I play. Is that going to be a problem? I'm now just playing this, sort of putting no thought into it at all. I now blundered into the same drawing position, but I think I might have done, I mean, if this is really easy to win, it's still a win here. I think I've played this pretty badly, and still won. So there you go. It's obviously easy to win because I just played it really badly and still managed to win. Right, so last with the two files separating is if it's a central and a rook's pawn. So we've got a central and a rook's pawn here. And, you know, after watching me play that last position pretty badly, but still managing to win it, which sort of showed how it was so easy to win, you might now also be doubting me even more, saying, well, all right, we'll forgive you a little bit for that, but you seem to have lost the ability to count. This video is meant to be about two files separating, and yes, there are three files separating this. But the first thing to point out is that there's one thing with a central and a rook's pawn straight away that's just absolutely trivial that I reckon we all should just spot immediately. So is this position, white to play, what would you do? And it's an absolute no-brainer. We should just swap the rooks. There's nothing black can do to avoid that swap of rooks. And all we're going to do, I mean, our plan is, this bishop is just going to stay controlling the d3 square. Our king's going to head to h1, because that is the opposite colour to that bishop. So we just leave our king on h1, and we just don't care what happens. We just lose the bishop for the d pawn. As soon as it hits d3, we take it. So that's just a draw. It's trivial. It's absolutely trivial if the colour of the promotion square of the rook's pawn is the opposite to the attacking bishop, because we just stick our king in the corner and earmark the bishop we just sacrifice it for the other pawn. So it doesn't really matter how many files are separating for that. If the attacking side controls the promotion square, which is the case here, we can't do that. But because there's not enough space, the draw is still pretty simple. So that there's nothing that white can do here. In fact, black can mess it up and still get away with it. So white tries to make progress here with king f5. We move the bishop. King e7 was probably a slightly just sort of less risky defense. Just stop king f6. Bishop back here. None of this is a problem for black. It probably should stop king e8, just by playing king d7 or something. But even allowing the king round to e8 is still not a problem. This is still just completely drawn. Although you would now mess it up with bishop a7, for example. So once that king's in, yeah, you have had it, because the white king's going to come to c8. Bishop clears the b7 square, and it's in. So we did need to be just a bit careful of that. But in this position here, we would still actually draw. It's not the sort of position I'd fancy drawing like this, but we still draw with king c7. We might see king e7, bishop c5 check, king e6, and there's still lots of drawing moves. Any maintaining of control of this diagonal is still just a draw. But probably better than all of that is after king f5, we could just play king e7 straight away and just sort of maintain this zone. So central and rook's pawn, bit of care required. If the rook's pawn's promotion colour is the opposite to the attacking bishop, it's easy. We just stick our king in the corner and sack the bishop for the other pawn. If it's the same colour, bit of care required, but also just easy to draw. That's basically everything. Two bishops pawns usually win. The central and knight's pawn, if the defending side controls the promotion square, you go through that defensive procedure that I did against Stockfish. If the attacking side controls the promotion square, it's reasonably easy to win, which I demonstrated by playing badly and still winning it. And if it's a central and rook's pawn, it's just a draw. Either sack the bishop, stick the king in the corner, or just a little bit of care, as shown here. And that's it.